The year was 1875, a time when the untamed expanses of the Arizona Territory promised new lives for those desperate enough to risk everything. For those who ventured across the merciless Sonoran Desert, dreams of prosperity could shatter in an instant, leaving nothing but bloodshed and bitter lessons about a land that forgave no weakness. This is the story of Emily Stone, who watched her entire world burn before her very eyes, and the Apache hunter who found her when all she had left was the stubborn will to survive. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The blood on Emily Stone's hands had dried to a deep rust, flaking away as she clutched the small Derringer pistol her brother had pressed into her palm before they left Tennessee. 5 days had passed since the attack. 5 days since she had hidden beneath an overturned wagon, pressing her fist against her mouth to muffle her screams as the sounds of death surrounded her. 5 days since the Whitman wagon train. 23 settlers bound for the silver mines of Prescott had been attacked in the pre-dawn stillness by men whose faces were concealed by bandanas and whose voices carried no hint of mercy. Emily had been gathering firewood when the first shots rang out. The thunderous crack of rifles shattered the quiet dawn, followed by screams that would haunt her for however long she had left to live. She had dropped instantly to the earth, her body responding before her mind could process what was happening. Years spent hunting with her brother in the Tennessee hills had taught her to move silently, and now that skill kept her alive as she crawled through the sand and scrub away from camp. But she wasn't far enough to avoid witnessing the slaughter. Now she was alone in the Sonoran Desert, a place where the sky stretched endlessly in all directions, making her feel increasingly insignificant with each passing hour. Her chestnut hair hung in dirty tangles around her face, once braided neatly beneath a sunbonnet, but now wild and matted with dust. Her blue calico dress was torn at the hem, stained with dirt and blood, some hers, some not. The early October wind cut through her clothing with surprising sharpness. Winter came differently to these territories, not with snow, but with nights cold enough to kill anyone unprepared. Emily knew that if dehydration didn't claim her first, the freezing nights surely would. She had taken what she could from the massacre site after the attackers left. Her brother's pistol with 3 bullets remaining, a canteen less than half full of water, a small pouch of jerky, and a woolen shawl that had fallen from one of the wagons during the chaos. Nothing else had been salvageable. The raiders had been thorough in their destruction. "Keep moving," she whispered to herself, her voice raspy from thirst and disuse. Just keep moving. But toward what? Emily had no clear destination, only the vague understanding that she needed to find water, a settlement, a trading post, any sign of civilization in this merciless landscape. The Whitman wagon train had been following the old Spanish trail, aiming to reach Fort Verde before continuing north. But in her panic and confusion after the attack, she'd strayed from the trail. Each step was becoming more difficult than the last. Her boots, practical but never meant for such a journey, had rubbed raw blisters on her heels that burst and bled anew with every step. The Derringer she carried offered little comfort against the vastness of the wilderness or the threats it contained. As twilight approached, Emily sought shelter in a cluster of red rock formations, gathering what dry brush she could find to create some meager protection against the wind. She had no means to start a fire. The flint and steel had been in her. Brother's pack and Sarah Connor's body lay back at the massacre site, eyes staring sightlessly at the sky. Ezra had been a blacksmith from Knoxville, full of dreams about forging tools for the new settlements. After their parents died of fever 3 years earlier, he had convinced Emily that a fresh start in Arizona Territory was what they both needed. The wagon train journey was supposed to be the beginning of their new life, not the end of everything she'd ever known. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by the distant howl of coyotes and the constant gnawing fear that kept her heart racing. When dawn broke, Emily forced herself to her feet despite the protests of her aching body. The morning was clear, the sun already promising punishing heat, though the air still held the night's chill. She allowed herself a small sip from the canteen, rationing what little water remained before steeling her resolve. Her brother had always said she had a stubborn streak wider than the Mississippi. It was time to prove him right. By midday, the sun had climbed high in the cloudless sky, beating down with relentless intensity that soaked her dress with sweat and left her dizzy with thirst. Emily's pace slowed, her boots sliding on loose stone, each step requiring more effort than she could afford to expend. Still, she pushed forward, following what appeared to be a dried creek bed in hopes it would lead to water. It was during a brief rest in the meager shade of a mesquite tree that she spotted it. A thin column of smoke rising in the distance, barely visible against the pale blue sky. Her heart leapt into her throat. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant people. People meant either salvation or danger. Emily hesitated, debating whether to approach or avoid the smoke. Who might be waiting there? Settlers, soldiers, or perhaps the very men who had attacked her wagon train. Desperation won over caution. She would die out here alone. That much was certain. Whatever waited at that fire couldn't be worse than dying of thirst in this vast emptiness. She altered her course, heading toward the smoke with renewed purpose. The terrain became more difficult, but she barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on that distant promise of life. What she didn't notice were the eyes watching her from a ridge nearly half a mile away. A solitary figure tracked her movement through the rocky landscape. He had been following her trail for nearly a day, reading the story of her desperate flight in the disturbed stones and dragging footprints she left behind. Tecumseh lowered his brass spyglass and frowned. The woman was heading straight for a camp of whiskey traders whose reputation for cruelty toward both Apaches and women was well known throughout the territory. She was walking from one death into another. He tucked the brass spyglass, a prized possession traded years ago for 6 prime deerskins, into the leather pouch at his side. The breeze stirred the single eagle feather woven into his long black hair, a token of achievement rather than ornament. Tecumseh was Apache of the Tonto Band. Though he had spent much of the past decade moving between worlds, hunting, trading, occasionally serving as scout for the army when it suited his purposes and kept peace for his people. He had been tracking a small herd of pronghorn when he discovered the massacre site 2 days earlier. The brutality of the attack had told him immediately it wasn't the work of his people or any tribe he knew. The bodies had been stripped of valuables but left otherwise intact. No tribal warrior would waste such resources. This was the work of white men preying on their own kind. Bandits using the convenient excuse of Indian attacks to cover their crimes. He had found her trail leading away from the site, small footprints, uneven, clearly made by someone exhausted and frightened. Following her hadn't been a conscious decision, merely an extension of his curiosity, and perhaps something deeper, something he wasn't ready to acknowledge. Now watching her stumble toward danger, Tecumseh knew he had a choice to make. Leave her to her fate. After all, she was not his responsibility, not his people, or intervene in ways that could bring him only trouble. The relentless sun continued to beat down, washing away any easy answers, leaving only the hard truth that the woman wouldn't survive another day alone in the desert. Tecumseh stood, adjusted the rifle slung across his back, and began to move. Whatever decision he had just made, even he wasn't entirely sure of his reasons. But as the distance between them closed, he knew that both their fates had just become entangled in ways neither could yet understand. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emily's vision blurred as she pushed forward through the scattered saguaro and brittle bush. The distant smoke was her only beacon in the gathering dusk. Her legs trembled beneath her, threatening to buckle with each step. The day's heat had sapped what little strength remained in her body, and now, as the sun lowered, an evening chill raised goose flesh on her arms. The small derringer clutched in her right hand offered little reassurance, but she gripped it tighter as she approached what appeared to be a clearing ahead. The smell of wood smoke grew stronger, mixing with another scent that made her empty stomach clench: cooking meat. She paused at the edge of the clearing, partially concealed by a mesquite thicket. Their loud, coarse laughter carried to her hiding spot, along with fragments of conversation that made her skin crawl. Good haul from them wagons. Should have kept one of them women, though. Next time we won't be so hasty. The blood in Emily's veins turned to ice. These weren't potential saviors. These were the men who had murdered the Whitman party, her brother, everyone she had known. She began to back away slowly, careful not to make a sound, when her foot caught on an exposed root. She stumbled, catching herself against a tree trunk, but not before dislodging a cascade of dried leaves. One of the men turned toward the sound, his hand moving to the pistol at his belt. "Who's there?" he called, voice sharp with suspicion. "Show yourself." Emily froze, terror locking her muscles in place. The man started toward her hiding spot, joined by another who carried a rifle. She knew she should run, but her body refused to obey, trapped between fear and exhaustion. "Check it out, Rollins," the second man ordered. "Probably just a coyote, but no sense taking chances." The man called Rollins drew his pistol and advanced toward the mesquite thicket where Emily hid. In 20 more steps he would discover her. In 30 she would be dead, or worse, a sharp whistling sound cut through the air, followed by a dull thud. Roland stopped abruptly, looking down at his chest in confusion. The shaft of an arrow protruded from between his ribs, its fletching, trembling with the impact. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but only blood emerged, spilling down his chin before he crumpled to the ground. Pandemonium erupted in the camp. The remaining men scattered for cover, grabbing weapons and shouting conflicting orders. Another arrow flew from somewhere to Emily's left, missing its target, but sending the bandits into further disarray. "Apache!" one of them yelled. "Take cover!" Emily remained motionless, her mind struggling to process what was happening. The bandits' attention was no longer on finding her, but on the new threat. She needed to move, to escape while they were distracted. But which way was safe? A strong hand clamped over her mouth from behind, stifling the scream that rose in her throat. An arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her backward into the deeper shadows beyond the mesquite thicket. "Be still," a voice whispered in her ear, the English accented but clear, "or we both die." Emily's instinct was to struggle, to fight against this new captor. But the sound of gunfire from the camp made her reconsider. Whoever held her had just killed one of the men responsible for the massacre. Perhaps, just perhaps, he was not an enemy. She allowed herself to be pulled deeper into the desert scrub, moving in a low crouch behind her mysterious rescuer. Only when they were several hundred yards from the camp did he release his hold on her. Emily spun around. Daringer raised defensively and got her first clear look at the man. He was tall with broad shoulders and the distinctive copper skin of the native peoples. His black hair was pulled back with a single eagle feather, partially covered by a wide-brimmed hat that seemed oddly out of place with his otherwise traditional appearance. A bow was slung across his back alongside a rifle of American make, but it was his eyes that held her attention, dark, intelligent, and currently regarding her with a mixture of weariness and assessment. "They kill your people," he stated rather than asked. "At Wagon Place 5 suns ago." Emily nodded slowly, not lowering her pistol. "Yes. How did you found dead? Saw your tracks." He gestured in the direction they had come. "Those men, bad men, not my people who attacked your wagons." "I know," Emily whispered, the Daringer wavering in her grip as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. "I heard them talking." The man studied her for a moment longer, then nodded once, as if coming to a decision. "Cannot stay here. They will search when they find courage again." As if to emphasize his point, another shot rang out from the direction of the camp, followed by shouting. The bandits were regrouping, perhaps preparing to hunt down whoever had attacked them. "I'm Emily," she said, lowering the pistol finally. What choice did she have but to trust this stranger? "Emily Stone." The man touched his chest. "Tecumseh too." Then, seeming to reconsider, he added, "White men call me Swiftwater." "Thank you," Emily began, but her words died as her legs finally gave way beneath her. She crumpled toward the ground, the world spinning around her. Nakoi too moved with surprising speed, catching her before she could fall completely. Too long without water, without rest, he observed, his expression unreadable in the deepening twilight. Needs safe place. Despite her situation, despite everything, Emily felt a flicker of fear as this stranger, this Apache warrior, lifted her into his arms as easily as if she were a child. But she lacked the strength to protest. And somewhere in her mind, a voice whispered that if he had wanted to harm her, he could have done so already. As consciousness slipped away, her last coherent thought was that 5 days ago she would have found the idea of placing her life in the hands of an Apache warrior unthinkable. Now it seemed her only chance for survival in a world turned savage and strange. Tecumseh carried her deeper into the wilderness, moving with a silent grace that seemed impossible for someone bearing her weight. The sounds of pursuit faded behind them as darkness settled completely over the land. Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, awareness coming in fragments. The steady rhythm of Tecumseh's breathing, the occasional snap of a twig beneath his feet, the stars appearing one by one through gaps in the clouds above. When she next opened her eyes fully, they were in a small ravine sheltered by an overhanging rock formation. A tiny fire burned, carefully banked to produce minimal smoke. The warmth it radiated was the first real comfort Emily had felt in days. Tecumseh knelt beside her, offering a water skin. "Drink slow," he cautioned. She accepted it with trembling hands, taking careful sips of the cool water. Each swallow felt like life itself flowing back into her parched body. "Why?" she asked when she had drunk her fill. "Why help me?" Tecumseh too sat back on his heels, considering her question with the same grave intensity he seemed to apply to everything. In the flickering firelight she could see details she had missed before. A scar that ran along his jawline, the intricate beadwork on the medicine pouch that hung at his belt, the weariness in his eyes that spoke of a man who had seen too much. "Many reasons," he answered finally. "None simple." He reached into a leather bag and withdrew a strip of dried meat, offering it to her. "Eat, sleep. Tomorrow words will come easier." Emily accepted the food, tearing off small pieces with her teeth, as she'd seen the men of the wagon train do with their jerky. The flavor was unfamiliar but not unpleasant, smoky. As she ate, Nakohi too moved to the edge of their small camp, positioning himself where he could watch for any sign of pursuit. His profile against the night sky seemed as much a part of this wild landscape as the rock formations and cacti that surrounded them. Emily finished the meat and leaned back against the stone wall behind her, wondering at the strange turn her fate had taken. 5 days ago she was Emily Stone, a blacksmith's sister heading toward a new life in Prescott. Now she was a survivor, dependent on the mercy of a man from a world as foreign to her as the moon. Sleep tugged at her heavier with each passing moment. As her eyes drifted closed, her last thought was of how quickly everything could change. How thin the line between life and death, between enemy and ally, between past and future. In her dreams, the massacre played out again and again. But this time, a figure watched from the shadows, a man with dark eyes and an eagle feather, witnessing her survival with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Dawn broke with a cold clarity that painted the desert in shades of amber and gold. Emily woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the rock shelter around her and the small fire that had burned down to glowing embers. Memory flooded back in a rush, the bandits, the arrow, the man called Tecumseh who had carried her to safety. She sat up slowly, muscles protesting after days of exertion and poor rest. Her dress had dried overnight, stiff with dirt and other stains she preferred not to examine too closely. A quick assessment of her surroundings revealed that she was alone. Panic fluttered in her chest. Had Tecumseh abandoned her, she reached instinctively for the derringer, finding it placed carefully beside the water skin within easy reach. "You sleep like dead," came a voice from the entrance of the small shelter. Nako, too, ducked inside, carrying a handful of small brownish roots. "Good body needs healing." Relief washed over Emily, followed immediately by embarrassment at her reaction. "I thought swift water leaves me." A hint of what might have been amusement touched his eyes. "No. Went to find food. Check for bad men." He knelt by the fire, adding small twigs to coax the embers back to life. They searched still, but go in wrong direction. South. Emily watched as he set the roots near the growing flames. "What are those?" "Desert potato, good food, medicine too." He glanced at her torn dress and the visible... Tecumseh nodded grimly and began applying the paste with surprisingly gentle fingers. "Infection starts," he explained. "This will fight, but need more. Have medicine at my camp." He finished treating her wound and sat back. "Can you walk today?" Emily flexed her feet, assessing the pain in her blistered heels. "Yes," she said with more confidence than she felt. "How far, 2 days?" Maybe 3? He studied her face. For me, maybe less? The implied challenge in his words sparked something in Emily, a stubborn pride she had nearly forgotten during her days of desperate flight. I can keep up. The hint of a smile ghosted across Takomisao's face. We see they ate the desert potatoes along with the last of Nakoheru's dried meat. The food, simple as it was, restored some of Emily's strength, though she knew it would take more than one meal to recover from her ordeal. As they prepared to leave, Emily found herself confronting a reality she'd been too exhausted to fully consider. The night before, she was placing her trust, her life, in the hands of a man whose people were often portrayed as savages in the stories told around settler campfires. Yet this savage had shown more humanity than the white men who had murdered her brother. "Why did you help me?" she asked again as Nakohe too extinguished the fire with handfuls of dirt. Truth has many sides like riverstones. He seemed to debate with himself before continuing. "I follow tracks from Wagon Place. See, you are alone hunted." His expression hardened. "Those men, they kill my people too. Say Apaches did it. Use Ver of Tonto to hide their crimes." Emily frowned. "You were tracking them, the bandits." Takomisao nodded once. "For many moons they raid. They kill. They blame my people. Then white soldiers come punish innocent villages." He shouldered his pack. "You are witness. You saw truth. Maybe one day you speak this truth." The weight of his words settled over Emily. She had never considered the consequences of the false attribution of attacks. How many innocent people on both sides had died because of such deceptions? "I will," she promised, her voice strengthening with resolve. "If I live to tell anyone about it, you live," Takomisao said with quiet certainty. "Now we go." They traveled northwest, keeping to ravines and sparse woodland where possible to avoid being spotted. Takomisao, too, set a pace that was challenging but not impossible, occasionally slowing when he noticed Emily struggling. They spoke little, conversation limited to practical matters, warnings about terrain, brief rests for water, instructions on which plants to avoid. By midday, Emily's body had settled into the rhythm of the journey, the consistent movement actually easing some of the stiffness from her muscles. She found herself studying Takomisao as they walked. The efficient grace of his movements, the constant awareness he maintained of their surroundings, the way he blended European and native elements in his dress and tools. "You speak English well," she observed during a brief rest beside a small creek. Takomisao, too, gave her an appraising look as if deciding how much to reveal. "Lived at mission school 3 winters. Learned white man's words, white man's God." He dipped his hand in the creek, letting the water flow through his fingers. "Learned how white men think. Useful knowledge." "But you left," Emily said. "It wasn't a question. Mission wants Apache to become white inside. Forget old ways." He touched the medicine pouch at his belt. Some ways should not be forgotten. Emily thought of her own education at the ladies' seminary in Nashville, where she had been taught that civilization was a gift being bestowed upon the savage races. Now, facing the reality of the frontier, she wondered which world was truly savage. They continued their journey as afternoon shadows lengthened across the desert twice. Nakohe froze in mid-step, signaling for Emily to be still. Each time, after long moments of listening, he would relax slightly and gesture for them to proceed. She never asked what he had heard or sensed. Some things were better left unknown. As dusk approached, they reached a series of low hills dotted with juniper and pine. Takomisao, too, led her to a sheltered hollow, where a natural spring bubbled up from between rocks, creating a small pool before trickling away downstream. "We rest here," he announced, shedding his pack. "Good water hidden." Emily sank gratefully to the ground, removing her boots to examine her feet. The blisters had broken and resealed several times during the day's journey, creating a painful patchwork of raw and calloused skin. She stifled a groan as she dipped her feet in the cool spring water. Takomisao watched her for a moment, then disappeared into the gathering darkness. He returned shortly with a handful of broad leaves and some white chalky stones. Crouching beside the spring, he crushed the stones to powder and mixed it with the masticated leaves. "For feet," he explained, offering the mixture to her. "Will draw pain, help skin grow strong." Emily hesitated only briefly before applying the paste to her battered feet. The relief was almost immediate, a cooling sensation that dulled the throbbing pain. Thank you, she said, the words seeming inadequate for all he had done. You've been. She searched for the right word. Kind. Tekomasau looked away, uncomfortable with her gratitude. Survival. You help me, I help you. How have I helped you? Emily asked, genuinely puzzled. He was silent for so long that she thought he might not answer. Finally, he turned back to her, his expression serious in the deepening twilight. White woman alone on desert has many enemies. White woman with Apache hunter has one more, but also has ally who knows both worlds. He gestured to the vast landscape around them. This country bleeds from fighting between my people and yours. Maybe some must learn to walk between to find new path. The weight of his words settled over Emily as the first stars appeared overhead. She had lost everything she knew. Yet here in this hollow, beside a spring, with a man from a world she had been taught to fear, she felt the first tentative stirring of something unexpected. Not hope, it was too soon for that, but possibility, a future not yet written. As they prepared a small smokeless fire for the night, Emily found herself wondering what that future might hold, and whether she would have the courage to walk the path that was unfolding before her, one step at a time. Morning arrived with a layer of frost that glittered on the grass surrounding their camp. Emily woke to find Narcohetu already alert, watching the eastern horizon with a troubled expression. The paste on her feet had dried overnight, forming a protective crust that cracked when she moved. Beneath it, her skin felt less raw, the worst of the blisters beginning to heal. "Dusk coming," Tekomasau said, nodding toward a faint cloud visible in the distance. Bad timing. Emily followed his gaze, noting the ominous sign of approaching riders. "How far is your camp?" "Still 1 day, maybe more, with trouble." He handed her a small bundle of dried berries. "Eat. Need strength today." The berries were tart but nourishing, easing the hollow feeling in her stomach. As she ate, Emily took stock of herself. The torn dress that hung loosely on her frame after days of little food, the tangled mess of her hair, the dirt embedded beneath her fingernails. She had never been particularly vain, but the physical transformation reflected a deeper change taking place within her. "Can I?" She gestured toward the spring, embarrassed but determined. "I need to wash." Tekomasau too nodded, understanding immediately. "I will check the trail ahead. Return soon." He gathered his bow and slipped away through the trees, offering her privacy without needing to be asked. Emily waited until he was out of sight, then stripped off her filthy dress and undergarments. The water was breathtakingly cold, but she forced herself to endure it, scrubbing at her skin and hair with handfuls of sand from the spring's edge. The simple act of washing away days of grime felt like reclaiming a small piece of herself. She had just finished dressing when a sound caught her attention. A snapping twig too heavy to be Nakohatu's careful footsteps. Emily froze, her gaze darting to where her derringer lay beside her discarded boots. A man emerged from the trees on the opposite side of the spring, bearded, wearing a buckskin jacket stained with grease and gunpowder. One of the bandits, his eyes widened when he saw her. Surprise quickly replaced by a predatory smile. "Well now," he drawled, hand moving to the pistol at his belt. "Didn't expect to find a lady taking a bath out here." His gaze traveled over her with open hunger. "You must be the one that got away from the wagons." Emily's mind raced. Tekomasau was too far to hear a call for help. The derringer was several steps away. The bandit had a gun. Her options were few and desperate. Rollins was right. Thought he heard something before that arrow took him. The man spat on the ground. "Where's your red-skinned friend?" "She's the one who's been leaving us little surprises." "I don't know what you're talking about," Emily said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'm alone." The man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the rocks. "Sure you are, darling, and I'm the Queen of England." Emily's mind switched from terror to calculation in an instant. Her father's hunting lessons echoed in her memory. Fear is useful only if it makes you act. The bandit stepped closer, his pistol trained on her. "Your father ain't here to help you now, is he?" "No," Emily agreed, her eyes dotting briefly past the man's shoulder. "But he is." It was the oldest trick imaginable, but the bandit's instinct betrayed him. He half-turned just enough for Emily to lunge toward her derringer. Her fingers closed around the small pistol as the man realized his mistake. "You little..." His curse was cut short by the whisper of an arrow. It struck his raised arm, sending his pistol flying as he howled in pain. Tecumseh too emerged from the trees behind Emily, another arrow already nocked and drawn. "Drop gun," he ordered. On ground, the wounded bandit cradled his injured arm, his face contorted with rage and fear. "You're dead, Apache. You and your woman both. Stone Williams has 20 men searching these hills. They'll find you, maybe." Tecumseh too agreed calmly. "But you not live to see it." The bandit's eyes widened as he recognized the certainty in Nako Two's voice. In a desperate move, he lunged for his fallen pistol. Emily fired without thinking. The Daringers' report deafening in the small clearing. The bullet caught the bandit in the chest. He staggered backward, a look of disbelief replacing the rage, then collapsed beside the spring, staining the clear water crimson. Emily stared at the smoking Derringer in her hand, trembling with shock and the sudden violence of what she'd done. It wasn't her first kill. She'd shot game with her father since childhood. But a human life was different. Even one as corrupted as this man's. "You protect self," Tecumseh said quietly, lowering his bow. "No shame in living." She nodded numbly, still staring at the dead bandit. "He said there were 20 men searching for us. He speak truth about that." Nakohitu moved quickly, gathering their few belongings. "Stone Williams is the red-haired man. Leader very dangerous. We go now, different way." "Who is Stone Williams?" Emily asked, finally tearing her gaze away from the dead man. "Why would he pursue us so relentlessly?" Nakohitu's expression darkened. "Stone Williams was Army scout before, knows territory trails, now leads bad men, raids both settler wagons and Apache villages, takes what he wants." He shouldered his pack. "Army blames Apaches for his crimes. He profits from fear." Emily understood with sickening clarity. The bandits weren't just robbing for profit. They were deliberately sowing conflict between settlers and native peoples, manipulating the army into attacking innocent Apache villages while they continued their raids under the cover of supposed Indian atrocities. They left the spring quickly, Tecumseh, leading them into increasingly rugged terrain where horses would struggle to follow. The morning passed in tense silence, both acutely aware that the sound of a gunshot might have carried 2 other members of Stone Williams' gang. By midday, they had climbed high enough into the foothills that Emily could look back across the vast stretch of desert they had crossed. In the distance, dust clouds marked the movement of multiple riders, converging on the area they had left behind. "They find dead man soon?" Tecumseh observed grimly. "Then follow trail." "Can we reach your camp before they catch us?" Emily asked, the reality of their situation settling over her like a shroud. "Not direct way. Need to hide trail, move through rough country." He studied the terrain ahead thoughtfully. 1 day becomes 2, maybe 3, but safer. As they pushed deeper into the mountains, the landscape changed dramatically. The scrub and cacti gave way to juniper and pine, the air growing cooler with the elevation. Emily found herself breathing easier despite their desperate circumstances. The thicker air and shade, a welcome respite from the desert's punishing heat. Nakohe too moved with the assurance of someone completely at home in this environment, pointing out features of the land that would have escaped Emily's notice. Edible plants she'd never seen before, tracks of animals invisible to her untrained eye, subtle signs of water that could mean the difference between life and death. "How did you learn all this?" she asked during a brief rest, genuinely curious about the depth of his knowledge. "Not learn," he corrected. "Live. These mountains speak to those who listen." He gestured to a nearby juniper, gnarled and ancient. "This tree tells where water hides beneath ground. These stones," he indicated a particular pattern of rocks, "tell where deer pass in mourning. Land speaks. Most white people not listen." Emily considered his words with newfound humility. Her education in Nashville had taught her that civilization meant conquering nature, bending it to human will through fences and fields and settlements. Yet here was a different kind of knowledge, not dominating the land, but living in conversation. "With it, I'd like to learn," she said simply. "To listen." Tecumseh studied her face for a moment, perhaps searching for mockery, but finding none, he nodded once. "Good listening keeps you alive here." As they continued their journey, he began pointing out more details. Which plants could heal, which could kill, how to read the clouds for coming weather, how to move with minimal disturbance to the environment around them. Emily absorbed it all eagerly, recognizing that this knowledge was both practical survival skill and something more profound, a way of seeing the world that had been entirely absent from her previous life. Late in the afternoon, as they followed a game trail between steep rock walls, Nakohetu suddenly raised his hand, signaling for silence. Emily froze, her newly developing awareness immediately alert to the unnatural stillness that had fallen over the canyon. No birds called, no insects chirped. Something had disturbed the natural rhythm of the place. Tecumseh silently notched an arrow, his eyes scanning the ridgel line above them. Emily's hand moved to her derringer, though she knew its short range made it nearly useless in this terrain. They stood motionless, barely breathing as seconds stretched into minutes. Then, almost imperceptibly, Tecumseh relaxed, lowering his bow slightly. "Mountain lion," he whispered, watching us but not hunting now. "Fed already?" Emily appeared nervously at the ridgeline, seeing nothing but rocks and scattered vegetation. "How can you tell?" "Smell blood on wind. Fresh kill nearby." He resumed walking, though his vigilance remained heightened. "Big cat. Curious about strange creatures in territory not hungry." The thought of being observed by an unseen predator sent a shiver down Emily's spine, but she trusted Nakohetu's assessment. His survival in this harsh land depended on accurately reading such signs. As twilight approached, they found shelter in a small cave set high in a cliff face, accessible only by a narrow winding path. From its mouth they could see for miles in the direction they had come, allowing them to spot any pursuit well before it reached them. "Good place," Nakohetu said with satisfaction. "Safe for night, Stone Williams's men not find easily." The cave had obviously served as a shelter before. Blackened stones from previous fires lay in a circle near the entrance, and dry wood had been stacked carefully against one wall. "Your place?" Emily asked, gesturing to the prepared firewood. No, he too nodded. Hunting camp good water nearby. He set about preparing a small, nearly smokeless fire, while Emily gathered fresh juniper boughs to create sleeping pallets. Working together in the gathering darkness, they established a camp that felt almost comfortable compared to their previous nights. When the fire was burning steadily, Tecumseh produced a small sack of cornmeal and dried meat from his pack. "Last food," he said, mixing the ingredients with water in a small clay pot. "Tomorrow hunt, if safe." The resulting stew was simple but satisfying, warming Emily from within as night settled fully over the mountains. Outside, a wind began to rise, whistling through the canyon with an eerie voice that seemed to carry whispers and secrets. "Storm, a humming," Nakohetu observed, glancing at the cave entrance where stars were being steadily obscured by clouds. "Good rain hides trail and keeps Stone Williams's men miserable," Emily added with grim satisfaction, thinking of the bandits who had destroyed her future, being forced to endure a mountain storm in their pursuit. A rare smile crossed Tecumseh's face. "Yes, very wet, very cold, not like Apache, who knows dry places." They sat in companionable silence for a time, listening to the rising wind and the crackling fire. Emily found herself studying her unlikely protector across the flames, the sharp planes of his face, the weathered hands that moved with such precise economy, the quiet dignity he carried even in these desperate circumstances. "Tell me about your people," she said finally. "Not what white settlers say, but the truth." Tecumseh considered her request, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "Apache means enemy in Zuri language, not our word for ourselves." He gazed into the fire as if seeing beyond it to something distant. "We call ourselves the people. Many bands, Tonto, Chiricahua, Mescalero, others, each with own territory, own ways, but all in day." He spoke then of his people's connection to the land, of seasonal migrations following game and the Arizona Territos, white settlements, and Apache communities occupied the same physical space, but might as well have been different planets for all they understood of each other. "Your turn," Tecumseh said when he had finished. "Tell of your people." Emily hesitated, uncertain what aspect of white society would interest him most. "My family came from Scotland 3 generations ago. My grandfather fought in the War for Independence, then settled in Tennessee." She smiled faintly at the memory. "My father was a farmer who loved books more than fields. He taught me to read when I was 4 years old. said education was more valuable than land. She told him of growing up in the rolling hills of Tennessee, of the Civil War that had torn their community apart, of her mother's death from fever and her father's from a broken heart soon after. She spoke of her brother Ezra taking up blacksmithing, of their decision to seek a new beginning in the Arizona Territory after losing their parents and their farm. The wagon train was supposed to be our path to a new life, she concluded softly. Ezra had arrangements to set up a smithy in Prescott. I was to teach at the new school there. Teacher Tecumseh said thoughtfully, "You know many things from books." "Some things," Emily acknowledged, "but books didn't prepare me for this." She gestured to the wilderness around them. "I'm learning that knowledge comes in many forms." Outside, the storm broke with sudden fury. Rain lashed the cliff face, driven by howling wind that occasionally sent droplets hissing into their fire. Thunder rolled through the canyon like the voice of some ancient deity, echoing against the stone walls. "Sleep," Tecumseh advised. "Storm helps us. Tomorrow long journey." Emily settled onto her juniper bough bed, pulling her woolen shawl tight around her against the cave's chill. The events of the day, the confrontation at the spring, the desperate flight through the mountains, the killing of the bandit, crashed over her now that the immediate danger had passed. Her hands trembled with delayed shock and unbidden tears slipped down her cheeks. Tecumseh pretended not to notice, maintaining the dignity of her private grief. He added wood to the fire, then moved to the cave entrance, standing watched despite the raging storm. His silhouette against the occasional lightning flash seemed to embody all the contradictions of her new reality. Fierce yet gentle, foreign yet increasingly familiar, terrifying yet somehow safe. "Teacher," he said without turning, his voice barely audible above the storm. "You learn fast. Apache way values this. Sees strength in adapting, surviving." He glanced back at her, his expression solemn in the firelight. "You have this strength." The simple words carried a weight that settled around Emily like a protective blanket. In them she heard not just recognition of her current efforts, but something more profound acknowledgement of her value as a person, not just as a helpless white woman to be rescued. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing her voice wouldn't carry to him over the storm's fury, but needing to say the words nonetheless. As sleep finally claimed her, Emily realized something had fundamentally shifted within her. The woman who had hidden beneath a wagon during the massacre 5 days ago was disappearing, replaced by someone both harder and more aware. Someone who could kill to survive, but also recognize beauty in an alien worldview. Someone who could grieve what was lost while still moving forward into an uncertain future. The storm raged through the night, purifying in its intensity. By dawn it had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Emily woke to the rich scent of wet earth and pine, a fragrance so primordial it seemed to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to something ancient in her blood. Tecumseh was already awake, crouched at the cave entrance, studying the canyon below. He turned as she stirred, his expression uncharacteristically approving. "Storm good medicine," he said, washed away all tracks. "Stone Williams' men blind now, searching wrong places." He gestured to the vista beyond the cave. "Today we reach my people's camp. Tonight you sleep safe." The promise of safety after days of desperate flight was almost too much to comprehend. Emily felt tears threatening again and blinked them back firmly. There would be time for relief when they actually reached their destination. "How far?" she asked practically, gathering her few belongings. "Half-day's walk. Hard path but hidden." He studied her face. "You ready?" Emily nodded, determination replacing exhaustion. "I'm ready." As they prepared to leave their stone shelter, Tecumseh paused, reaching into his medicine pouch. He withdrew a small carved object, an eagle made from some dark wood, its wings spread as if in flight. He offered it to Emily without explanation. She accepted it uncertainly, feeling the smooth weight of the carving in her palm. "It's beautiful, but eagle sees far," Tecumseh explained. "Knows both earth and sky, lives between worlds." His eyes met hers with unexpected intensity, like you now, between old life and new path. The significance of the gift was not lost on Emily. This wasn't merely a trinket, but a symbol, perhaps even a form of protection or blessing. She closed her fingers carefully around the carving, tucking it into the pocket of her dress. where it rested against her hip. "I'll keep it safe," she promised, "and remember what it means." With that, they began the final leg of their journey, stepping out of the cave into a world washed clean by storm and illuminated by the promise of sanctuary ahead. The landscape transformed as they descended from the high ridge line, transitioning from pine forest to oak woodland, dotted with manzanita and flowering shrubs brought to life by the recent rain. The storm had cleansed the air, leaving a crystalline clarity that revealed distant mountains in sharp detail. Emily breathed deeply, savoring the rich scents of wet earth and vegetation. Tecumseh led them through hidden passes and shallow creek beds, always choosing the path that offered both concealment and solid footing. Though he maintained his usual vigilance, a subtle change had come over him as they neared Apache territory. A relaxation in his shoulders, a lightness in his step that spoke of homecoming. "Your people," Emily ventured as they paused beside a small waterfall to refill their water skins. "Will they welcome me?" Tecumseh's expression turned thoughtful as he secured the water skin to his belt. "Some yes, some no." He met her gaze directly. "Chief Running Fox is wise man but cautious with white settlers. Too many broken promises." "I'm hardly a settler now," Emily said with a wry smile. "Truth," he nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. "But still prepare for difficult welcome. Stay close to me." They continued their journey, angling northeast through a series of narrow ravines that gradually opened into a broader valley. The vegetation changed subtly. Individual trees giving way to scattered groves interspersed with meadows where wildflowers bloomed in vibrant patches. As they walked, Tecumseh began pointing out features of the landscape that would have escaped Emily's notice. The nearly invisible game trail they followed, plants that could be eaten or used for medicine. Signs of animals that had passed recently. "There," he said, indicating a patch of disturbed earth beneath an overhanging ledge. "Badger den. Good sign." "Why is that good?" Emily asked, seeing nothing remarkable about the burrow. "Badger chooses safe places where water flows, where larger predators do not hunt." He tapped his temple. "Badger smart. We learn from badgers." Emily found herself absorbing these lessons eagerly, filing away knowledge that would have seemed irrelevant in her previous life, but now might mean the difference between survival and death. There was a strange freedom in this new existence, stripped of social conventions and expectations, reduced to the essential business of staying alive. Late in the afternoon, they crested a ridge, and Tecumseh too suddenly raised his hand, signaling for Emily to stop. He dropped into a crouch, motioning for her to do the same. She followed his lead immediately, her newly developed instincts responding without question. "What is it?" she whispered, scanning the landscape ahead. But seeing nothing unusual, Nako, too, pointed to a distant rise where a single figure on horseback was silhouetted against the sky. "Look out!" Emily squinted against the sun's glare. "One of your people?" "Yes, scout who watches borders of our hunting grounds." Tecumseh, too, studied the distant figure. "He sees us already." As if in confirmation, the scout raised a hand in a deliberate gesture. Tecumseh stood slowly and returned the signal, adding a second motion that Emily couldn't interpret. "Now he knows I return with stranger," Tecumseh explained. "He will ride to camp, bring news." "Is that good or bad?" Emily asked, rising to stand beside him. "Depends on news already in camp." A shadow crossed Nakohitu's face. "Last moon tensions with white settlers grew worse. More trouble since I left." He didn't need to finish the thought. Emily understood the precarious position she might be in. A white woman arriving in an Apache camp during a time of conflict between their peoples. The scout wheeled his horse and disappeared over the rock. Unwrapping it, he revealed a carved stone eagle small enough to fit in her palm, polished to a dull sheen by years of handling. "My father made this," Tecumseh said, pressing it into her hand. "Protection spirit eagle you carry gives strength. This gives." He searched for the word belonging. Emily closed her fingers around the small carving, deeply moved by the gesture. "I can't take this." "It was your father's. Now it's yours," he said firmly. "Keep close. When afraid, remember the bandit fell by your hand. You earned place." The weight of the small stone in her palm felt somehow significant. A tangible connection to Tecumseh's world. A talisman against the unknown challenges ahead. She slipped it into the pocket of her dress alongside the wooden eagle. Feeling the reassuring solidity against her hip, they continued their journey as the shadows lengthened across the valley. Emily noticed Tecumseh becoming increasingly alert, his gaze constantly scanning their surroundings. Once he paused abruptly, head cocked as if listening, though she heard nothing unusual. 3. Someone follows, he said quietly, hand moving to his knife. Emily felt a 10 chill run down her spine despite the afternoon warmth. The bandits? No, 15 different. He studied the trail behind them, eyes narrowed. One person moving, 21 quiet, very skilled. He frowned. Another scout, maybe? His expression, 28, remained troubled. Or someone who tracks both of us. They resumed walking, but 33 now. Tecumseh adjusted their path, leading them through areas of rocky ground where 38 tracks would be difficult to leave. He set a quick pace that had Emily struggling to keep up, her newly 44 developed stamina tested by the rough terrain and increasing elevation. The 50 sun was beginning to set when they entered a dense stand of oaks. The sudden dimness beneath the canopy was 56 disorienting after hours in open country. Emily stayed close to Tecumseh, 03 fighting the impression that eyes watched from the shadowed spaces between trees. Without warning, Tecumseh stopped. 11. Emily nearly collided with his back, catching herself just in time. Sheet 16 peered around him to see what had caused the abrupt halt. 3 Apache warriors, 22, stood blocking their path, bows drawn and arrows pointed directly at them. 27. Their faces were painted with red and black streaks, their expressions impassive and unwelcoming. One of them, 34, the center figure taller than the others, spoke sharply in Apache. 40 Nako. 2 responded calmly in the same language, his hands held slightly away. 46 from his weapons in a non-threatening gesture. The exchange continued for several tense, 53 moments, voices low, but the intensity clear even to Emily, who couldn't, 58, understand the words. Finally, the tall warrior lowered his bow slightly. Though his companions, 06, maintained their aim, he switched to heavily accented English, directing his words at Emily. Why you come here? 13 white woman. Emily stepped forward, grateful that her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. I survived a 20 massacre. Tecumseh saved my life. The warrior's eyes narrowed. Massacre by 27 who? White men. Bandits who attack both your people and mine, then blame Apaches 33 for their crimes. A flicker of surprise crossed the warrior's face before his expression hardened again. You witnessed 41 this? Yes, Emily said firmly. I saw everything. I can testify to the truth. 48. The 3 warriors exchanged glances. The tall one spoke again to Tecumseh, who, 53, nodded and replied. After another moment of consideration, the warrior gestured, 58, for his companions to lower their weapons. Chief must hear this, he said. You come. But his gaze fixed on 107 Emily with unmistakable warning. You walk with blind eyes. Nakoi, too, turned 114 to Emily, his expression conveying the seriousness of the situation. They fear. 20 you will learn path to village for protection. I understand, Emily said. 26, though the prospect of being blindfolded in this unfamiliar wilderness sent a surge of anxiety through her. The tall 34 warrior produced a strip of woven cloth. Nako took it from him and approached. 40 Emily. Trust me, he said quietly for her ears. 45 alone. No harm comes while I guide. Emily nodded, closing her eyes as he, 51, placed the cloth over them, tying it securely at the back of her head. The 56 sudden darkness was disorienting, heightening her other senses. The scent of pine, the sound of wind through 04 branches, the murmur of voices in a language she couldn't understand. She's 09 felt Tecumseh's hand close around hers, his grip firm and reassuring. I lead. Dorn 16 step where I step. They began to move forward, Emily placing her trust entirely in 23 Tecumseh's guidance. It was perhaps the most vulnerable she had been since the massacre, unable to see, surrounded by 30 those who might wish her harm, in territory utterly unknown to her. Yet 36, strangely, as they journeyed deeper into Apache land, she felt something unexpected beginning to take root within. 43 her. Not fear, though that was certainly present. Something else. A sense that 48 every step carried her further from the woman she had been, and closer to someone new, someone stronger. Someone 55 who might, against all odds, find a place in this harsh new world. The 01 carved eagles pressed against her hip with each step, a reminder of Nakohetu's words. You earned a place, she hoped, as 10 they led her blindfolded toward the unknown, that it would prove true. The 15 journey through darkness seemed endless. Emily concentrated on the pressure of Nakohetu's hand guiding her. 23. The sound of his voice occasionally murmuring. Instructions. Step high here. Duck branches, careful stones. The 31 only constants in her blindfolded world. The voices of the warriors surrounded her, their Apache language flowing like 38 water over rocks, sometimes sharp with what sounded like disagreement, other times low and urgent. When they finally 44 stopped, she could sense a change in the air, smoke from cooking fires, the distant sound of voices and movement. 52, the barking of dogs. They had reached the Apache camp. Ready? Tecumseh asked 59 quietly near her ear. Emily nodded, her throat too dry for words. The 05 blindfold was removed, and she blinked against the fading evening light, taking in her surroundings. The Apache Summer 13 camp spread before her in a sheltered valley. Perhaps 40 wiki-ups, conical 18 structures covered with brush and hides, arranged in a rough circle, with larger family groupings set slightly apart. 27. Cook fires flickered throughout the camp, sending thin columns of smoke into 32 the darkening sky. Children paused in their play to stare at the newcomers. 37. Women stood from their work with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Men approached with 44 hands resting on weapons. Narco, who stood tall beside her, his face, 51 composed but alert. The tall warrior who had confronted them in the forest moved ahead, calling out to the gathering, 58 crowd. A ripple of reaction passed through the assembly. Surprise, anger? Panzer 03 suspicion. A path cleared through the people as an elderly man emerged from 08, the largest wiki up at the center of the camp. His face was deeply lined with 13 age, his long gray hair bound with a single eagle feather. Despite his years, 20, he moved with the straight-backed dignity of one accustomed to authority. Chief 25 Running Fox, Tecumseh said under his breath. Show respect. Do not speak, 31, until spoken to. The chief approached slowly, his dark eyes taking in every 37 detail of Emily's appearance. The torn and stained dress, the tangled hair, the 43 mixture of fear and determination in her stance. He spoke in Apache to Tecumseh, 49, who responded at length, occasionally gesturing toward Emily or in the direction from which they had 56 traveled. Emily stood silently, acutely aware of the stares from all 02 sides. Children whispered behind their hands, nudged by mothers into silence. 07. Young warriors watched with undisguised suspicion. A few of the older women studied her with expressions that seemed 14 more calculating than hostile. Finally, Chief Grey Wolf turned his attention, 20 fully to Emily, addressing her in halting but understandable English. 25. Swift water says you survive. When all others die, says you witness truth of 30 who kills your people. Yes, Emily replied, forcing her voice to remain 35 steady. I saw everything. It was white men, bandits pretending to be Apaches. 42. They've been raiding both settler wagons and native villages, stirring hatred between our peoples. The chief's 48 weathered face remained impassive. Why should we believe white woman's words? 53. The debate continued as darkness 13 fell completely over the camp. More torches were lit, casting flickering 18 shadows across the gathered faces. Emily stood motionless beside Tecumseh, 23, determined not to show the exhaustion and fear that threatened to overwhelm her. 29. Finally, Chief Grey Wolf raised his hand, silencing the council's discussion. He turned back to Emily, 36, and Nako. 2 women will stay, he announced. 3 days council hears full 42 story tomorrow when mine's rested. He pointed to a small wiki up at the edge of the camp. Stay there. Watched. 49 always. With that, he turned and walked back toward the central wiki up, the council members following behind him. 56. The crowd began to disperse. Though many continued to cast curious or hostile, so one glances toward Emily. Good outcome, Takomisao said, 07 quietly as they began walking toward the designated shelter. Better than Point 12 expected. Being watched at all times is good, Emily whispered back. Not 18 killing immediately is good, Narohu replied with unexpected frankness. Rest, we talk more later. The small 26 wiki-up was sparsely furnished. 2 sleeping pallets of pine boughs covered with buffalo robes, a central fire pit, 33 a few clay vessels for water. A young woman entered shortly, 38 after them, silently placing a wooden bowl of stew and a water skin near the fire before departing without meeting. 45 Emily's eyes. Who is that? Emily asked, sinking gratefully onto one of 51 the pallets as her legs finally gave way beneath her. Morningstar, my sister's 58 daughter. Takomisao, too, sat across from her, wincing slightly as the movement Irofor pulled at his injured shoulder. She is curious about you. She didn't look at Tenmi. Apache way, watch without seeming to watch. A hint of amusement touched his 18 expression. Women in my family see everything. Emily managed a tired 23 smile at that. Women everywhere see everything. Men just don't notice us 28 noticing. This drew a small chuckle from Takomisao, a sound Emily realized she had, 34, never heard from him before. The brief moment of lightness felt precious amid 39 the tension of their situation. They ate the stew, a rich mixture of venison, .45 wild onions, and unfamiliar roots. In companionable silence, Emily found 51 herself, studying the interior of the wiki up, noting the craftsmanship of the 56 structure, the practical arrangement of the sparse belongings. What happens tomorrow? She asked finally. Council line 04 meets, you tell story, full story, every detail. They decide if truth or lie, and 11 if they decide I'm lying. Takomisao too didn't answer immediately. Sleep, he, .17 said instead. Need strength for tomorrow. Emily lay down on the buffalo robe, its musky scent oddly 24 comforting after days in the wilderness. Exhaustion pulled at her, but her mind raced with anxiety about the coming day. 32. Her testimony before the council would determine not just her fate, but potentially the future relationship on 38 between the Apache and nearby settlers. Takomisao too, she said softly into the 45 darkness. Thank you for bringing me here, for trusting me. There was a long 51 pause before he replied. You trusted first following Apache warriors into unknown 59 land. I had no choice. Always choice. Could have gone to soldiers. Choose .05 safety of your own people. Emily considered this. He was right. Of course, she had made a choice when she, 12, decided to continue with him rather than seek out any army patrol they might have encountered. A choice that had led her, 19 here, to this wiki up to tomorrow's testimony. Rest, Takomisao said, his voice. 26 already heavy with approaching slumber. Tomorrow comes soon. Despite her 32 anxiety, Emily found herself drifting off, lulled by the unfamiliar. Sounds of 38, the Apache camp, distant voices, the occasional laugh or cry of a child. Dogs, 44 barking at something in the night. Different from the sounds of Nashville, different from the wagon train, yet 51 somehow containing the same essential human elements. Her last thought before 56 sleep claimed her was a strange one, that perhaps the distance between her world and Nako 2's was not as vast as 03 she had once believed. Morning arrived with a soft touch on Emily's shoulder. She opened her eyes to find a young 11 woman, Summer Mist, Takomisao's niece, kneeling beside her pallet. The girl's .17 dark eyes were serious but not unfriendly, as she offered a small wooden cup of steaming liquid. Drink, she said. 26 her English surprisingly clear. Give strength for counsel. Emily sat up, 32 accepting the cup with murmured thanks. Tea was bitter but invigorating. 38 clearing the fog of sleep from her mind. She glanced around the wiki up to find that Takomisao was already gone. Where is 45 your uncle? She asked. Speaks with elders, Summer Mist answered, setting 50 out a clean dress, simple in design, but carefully made from soft buckskin. You 56 wear this, your dress. She gestured at Emily's torn and stained clothing with dough one, a slight grimace. Emily hesitated, touched by the unexpected kindness, but 07, uncertain about adopting Apache dress before the council. Would it seem presumptuous and attempt to curry 14 favor? Summer Mist seemed to read her thoughts. Council respects clean 20 appearance, shows respect back. She pointed to Emily's matted hair. I helped wing 27 with this too. Recognizing the wisdom in the young woman's advice, Emily 32 accepted the dress and allowed Summer Mist to help her wash and comb her tangled hair into a simple braid. The 40 transformation was remarkable. The buckskin dress fit surprisingly well. 45 and the simple act of being clean again restored something of her dignity. Thank you, Emily said when they had 53 finished. This is very kind. Summer Mist shrugged, but a small smile played, 59 at the corners of her mouth. Uncle says you are a brave woman. Shot bandit to save 06'em. She touched the beaded necklace she wore. Courage spirit strong in you. 12 now before Emily could respond the hide. Covering the wiki-up entrance was pulled aside a stern-faced warrior. 20 of those who had escorted them to the camp the previous evening gestured for her to follow. Uno waits, he said, 27 gruffly with a deep breath and a final grateful nod to Morning Star. Emily 32 stepped out to face whatever judgment awaited her. Council lodge stood at the 37 center of the camp, larger than the others and marked with symbols painted on its exterior. As Emily approached, 44 flanked by her stern warrior escort, she could see that a significant gathering, 50, had already assembled inside. The morning sunlight filtered through the smoke hole at the top, casting dappled 57 patterns across the assembled faces. Chief Running Fox sat at the head Darrow 3 of the circle, his weathered face impassive. To his right was the scarred 08 elder who had argued against her the previous evening, his single eye regarding her with undisguised 15 suspicion. To his left, the man with the bear claw necklace, the one who had spoken in her favor, nodded slightly. As 23 she entered, Narohu stood to one side, his posture formal, face carefully 29 neutral. He did not acknowledge her directly, but his presence provided a 34 measure of reassurance. Come forward, Chief Grey Wolf instructed, gesturing to the center of the circle. Sit here. 42. Emily took her place on the woven mat indicated, conscious of the many eyes upon her. Women of the tribe had 50 gathered at the periphery of the lodge, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Among them she 57 spotted Morning Star, who offered an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. You claim to witness .04 attack on wagon train. Grey Wolf began without preamble. Tell us what you saw. 10 every detail from beginning. Emily took a deep breath, centering herself. This was perhaps the most important 16 story she would ever tell. Lives, both Apache and settler, might depend on her 22 ability to convey the truth convincingly. We were part of the Whitman wagon train, 28, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. Bound for the silver mines near 33 Prescott. Families mostly the Harrows, the Millers. The Prestons, my brother 38, Sarah Connor and I joined in Santa Fe. She described the journey. 4 weeks on 45, the trail, the crossing of the Rio Grande. The gradual shift in landscape as 50 they entered the desert. 5 mornings ago, just before dawn, I went to gather kindling for the breakfast fire. We had Moy 57 camped in a small valley near a water hole. I was maybe a 100 yards from the nearest wagon when I heard the first 04 shots. Her voice remained steady as she recounted the horror of what followed. 10. The debate continued as darkness, when 13 fell completely over the camp. More torches were lit, casting flickering 18 shadows across the gathered faces. Emily stood motionless beside Tekomisau, 23, determined not to show the exhaustion and fear that threatened to overwhelm her. 29. Finally, Chief Grey Wolf raised his hand, silencing the council's discussion. He turned back to Emily 36 and Nako. 2 women will stay, he announced. 3 days council hears full 42 story tomorrow when minds rested. He pointed to a small wiki up at the edge of the camp. Stay there. Watched. 49 always. With that, he turned and walked back toward the central wiki-up, the council members following behind him. The crowd began to disperse, though many continued to cast curious or hostile .01 glances toward Emily. Good outcome, Takomisao said, 07 quietly as they began walking toward the designated shelter. Better than .12 expected. Being watched at all times is good, Emily whispered back. Not .18 killing immediately is good, Narohu replied with unexpected frankness. Rest, we talk more later. The small 26 wiki-up was sparsely furnished. 2 sleeping pallets of pine boughs covered with buffalo robes, a central fire pit, 33, a few clay vessels for water. A young woman entered shortly on 38 after them, silently placing a wooden bowl of stew and a water skin near the fire before departing without meeting 45 Emily's eyes. Who was that? Emily asked, sinking gratefully onto one of 51 the pallets as her legs finally gave way beneath her. Morningstar, my sister's 58 daughter. Takomisao, too, sat across from her, wincing slightly as the movement 04 pulled at his injured shoulder. She is curious about you. She didn't look at Tenmi, Apache way, watch without seeming to watch. A hint of amusement touched his 18 expression. Women in my family see everything. Emily managed a tired 23 smile at that. Women everywhere see everything. Men just don't notice us, 128 noticing. This drew a small chuckle from Takomisao, a sound Emily realized she had 34 never heard from him before. The brief moment of lightness felt precious amid 39 the tension of their situation. They ate the stew, a rich mixture of venison, 45 wild onions, and unfamiliar roots. In companionable silence, Emily found 51 herself, studying the interior of the wiki-up, noting the craftsmanship of the 56 structure, the practical arrangement of the sparse belongings. What happens tomorrow? She asked finally. Council by 04 meets. You tell story, full story, every detail. They decide if truth or lie, and 11 if they decide I'm lying. Takomisao too didn't answer immediately. Sleep, he 17 said instead. Need strength for tomorrow. Emily lay down on the buffalo robe, its musky scent oddly 24 comforting after days in the wilderness. Exhaustion pulled at her, but her mind raced with anxiety about the coming day. 32. Her testimony before the council would determine not just her fate, but potentially the future relationship, 38, between the Apache and nearby settlers. Takomisao too, she said softly into the 45 darkness. Thank you for bringing me here, for trusting me. There was a long 51 pause before he replied. You trusted first following Apache warriors into unknown 59 land. I had no choice, always choice. Could have gone to soldiers. Choose .05 safety of your own people. Emily considered this. He was right. Of course, she had made a choice when she 12 decided to continue with him, rather than seek out any army patrol they might have encountered. A choice that had led her, 19, here to this wiki up to tomorrow's testimony. Rest, Takomisao said, his voice 26 already heavy with approaching slumber. Tomorrow comes soon. Despite her 32 anxiety, Emily found herself drifting off, lulled by the unfamiliar. Sounds of 38, the Apache camp, distant voices, the occasional laugh or cry of a child. Dogs, 44 barking at something in the night. Different from the sounds of Nashville, different from the wagon train, yet 51 somehow containing the same essential human elements. Her last thought before 56 sleep claimed her was a strange one, that perhaps the distance between her world and Nako 2's was not as vast as Urdu 3 she had once believed. Morning arrived with a soft touch on Emily's shoulder. She opened her eyes to find a young 11 woman, Summer Mist, Takomisao's niece, kneeling beside her pallet. The girl's 17 dark eyes were serious but not unfriendly as she offered a small wooden cup of steaming liquid. Drink, she said. 26, her English surprisingly clear. Give strength for counsel. Emily sat up, 132 accepting the cup with murmured thanks. Tea was bitter but invigorating, 38 clearing the fog of sleep from her mind. She glanced around the wiki up to find that Takomisao was already gone. Where is 45, your uncle? She asked. Speaks with elders, Summer Mist answered, setting 50 out a clean dress, simple in design, but carefully made from soft buckskin. "You 56 wear this, your dress." She gestured at Emily's torn and stained clothing with O1, a slight grimace. Emily hesitated, touched by the unexpected kindness, but O7 uncertain about adopting Apache dress before the council. Would it seem presumptuous, an attempt to curry 14 favor? Summer Mist seemed to read her thoughts. Council respects clean .20 appearance, shows respect back. She pointed to Emily's matted hair. I helped 27 with this too. Recognizing the wisdom in the young woman's advice, Emily 32 accepted the dress and allowed Summer Mist to help her wash and comb her tangled hair into a simple braid. The 40 transformation was remarkable. The buckskin dress fit surprisingly well. 45, and the simple act of being clean again, restored something of her dignity. Thank you, Emily said when they had 53 finished. This is very kind. Summer Mist shrugged, but a small smile played 59 at the corners of her mouth. Uncle says you are a brave woman. Shot bandit to save I 06 him. She touched the beaded necklace she wore. Courage, spirit strong in you. 12 now before. Emily could respond. The hide, covering the wiki-up entrance, was pulled aside. A stern-faced warrior, 120 of those who had escorted them to the camp the previous evening, gestured for her to follow. Uno waits, he said, 27 gruffly with a deep breath and a final grateful nod to Morning Star. Emily 32 stepped out to face whatever judgment awaited her. Council lodge stood at the 37 center of the camp, larger than the others, and marked with symbols painted on its exterior. As Emily approached, 44 flanked by her stern warrior escort, she could see that a significant gathering, 50, had already assembled inside. The morning sunlight filtered through the smoke hole at the top, casting dappled 57 patterns across the assembled faces. Chief Running Fox sat at the head, Duro 3 of the circle, his weathered face impassive. To his right was the scarred Duro 8 elder who had argued against her the previous evening, his single eye regarding her with undisguised 15 suspicion. To his left, the man with the bear claw necklace, the one who had spoken in her favor, nodded slightly. As 23 she entered, Naruhu stood to one side, his posture formal, face carefully 29 neutral. He did not acknowledge her directly, but his presence provided a 34 measure of reassurance. Come forward, Chief Grey Wolf instructed, gesturing to the center of the circle. Sit here. 42. Emily took her place on the woven mat indicated, conscious of the many eyes upon her. Women of the tribe had 50 gathered at the periphery of the lodge, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Among them 57 spotted Morning Star, who offered an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. You claim to witness Duro 4 attack on wagon train. Grey Wolf began without preamble. Tell us what you saw. 10. Every detail from beginning. Emily took a deep breath, centering herself. This was perhaps the most important 16 story she would ever tell. Lives both Apache and settler might depend on her 22 ability to convey the truth convincingly. We were part of the Whitman wagon train, 28, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. Bound for the silver mines near 33 Prescott. Families mostly, the Harrows, the Millers, the Prestons, my brother, 38. Sarah Connor and I joined in Santa Fe. She described the journey. 4 weeks on 45, the trail, the crossing of the Rio Grande, the gradual shift in landscape as 50 they entered the desert. 5 mornings ago, just before dawn, I went to gather kindling for the breakfast fire. We had 57 camped in a small valley near a waterhole. I was maybe 100 yards from the nearest wagon when I heard the first Duro 4 shots. One elderly woman, 36 Grey Dove, had taken a particular interest in Emily. Though she spoke no English, she communicated through 43 gestures and expressions, showing Emily which plants could be eaten, which had medicinal properties, which 50 were to be avoided. She lost daughter to white man's sickness. Summer Mist explained when Emily asked about the 57-old woman's attention. Smallpox, maybe you were sent to learn Duro 2, her knowledge before she joins ancestors. The responsibility of this Duro 7 unexpected mentorship weighed on Emily. These were not simple cooking, 12 tips, or housekeeping skills being shared, but survival knowledge accumulated over generations, sacred in 20 their way. Throughout these days of learning, Tecumseh remained a distant 26 figure. She caught glimpses of him in council meetings, training with younger 31 warriors and departing on hunting expeditions. When their paths did cross their Marie 6, he acknowledged her with a nod or brief greeting. But the easy companionship of their journey seemed to have evaporated, 43 within the confines of the camp. The evening of her 4th day among the Apache, Emily sat alone, 51 outside her wickiup, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The carved eagles rested in her 59 palm, their smooth surfaces warmed by her touch. Spirit speaks to you. 05. Tecumseh's voice came from behind her, surprising Emily with its suddenness. He moved silently, even in camp. I 14 don't know about spirits, she admitted as he sat beside her on the fallen log. But they remind me that I'm stronger, 21 than I once believed. Tecumseh nodded, his gaze on the horizon. Council finishes 29 discussion tomorrow. Decision comes about Fort McDowell. Emily's heart, 34, quickened. Have they given any indication of their thinking? Divided, 39, some say risk too great. Stone Williams's men watch trails. Army patrol suspicious of 45 Apache. He glanced at her. Others say truth must be told no matter, 52 danger. I still wish to go, she said without hesitation. For justice, for 58 your cousin's family, for mine. A moment of silence stretched between them. 4, comfortable in a way their recent interactions had not been. Why have you been avoiding me? Emily asked. 10 finally, the question that had been troubling her for days. Tecumseh's expression remained carefully neutral. 18. Not avoiding, giving space. Here you are, white woman in Apache camp, 23 different from woman alone in wilderness. He hesitated, seeming to, 29, choose his words carefully. Some watch how I treat you, judge both of us by 35 this. Understanding dawned slowly. Their closeness on the journey, born of 41 necessity and shared danger, carried different implications within the social 46 structure of the camp. Nico's position, his respect among his people, could be 52 compromised by appearing too attached to an outsider. I see, Emily said softly. 59. I wouldn't want to cause problems for you here. Not problem, Nico corrected. Complication, different. Their conversation was interrupted by commotion at the camp's edge. Warriors 11 were gathering, weapons in hand, responding to something beyond Emily's view. Tecumseh, too, rose immediately, alert, 20, and tense. Stay here, he instructed, already moving toward the disturbance. 26. Emily hesitated only briefly before following at a discreet distance. 31. Whatever was happening might affect her as well, and she was tired of being sheltered from difficult truths. At the 38 camp's perimeter, a small group of warriors surrounded a kneeling figure, a 44 white man, bloodied and bound, his face a mass of bruises. Chief Running Fox, 50, stood before him, expression grave as Wolfsinger reported something in rapid Apache found near Pine Creek. Tecumseh, 58. Translated quietly for Emily, who had come to stand beside him despite his instructions. Watching camp when caught, 06 try to fight. The captive raised his head, revealing a face that made Emily gasp with recognition despite the 14 injuries. She knew him, one of Stone Williams's men, the youngest of the bandits she had glimpsed at their 20 camp. Grey Wolf turned at her reaction. You know this man? Yes, Emily confirmed, stepping forward. He was with the bandits, one of Stone Williams's gang. A ripple of tension passed through, 34 the gathered Apache. The captive's eyes widened as he recognized Emily. You're dead, he rasped, disbelief. 42 evident beneath his fear. You died in the wagons with the rest. Clearly not, Emily replied coldly. 50, unlike my brother, unlike the children your gang murdered. Grey Wolf, 55, addressed the captive in halting English. Why do you watch our camp? The narrow one young bandit's gaze darted between the armed warriors surrounding him. Stone Williams sent me, he said, desperation loosening, ate his tongue, said to find the Indian who's been picking us off. The one who took Rawlings with an arrow, and to look at 15 for any survivors from the wagon train. How did Stone Williams know to look here? 21. Tecumseh, too, demanded. Army patrol, the captive replied. They reported seeing a 28 white woman with an Apache Brave heading north. Stone Williams figured it had to be the 33 one that got away. Emily felt a chill run through her. Stone Williams knew she had 39 survived, knew she was a witness to his crimes, and now knew exactly where to 44 find her. Grey Wolf spoke rapidly to the council members who had joined the 49 gathering. The debate was brief but intense, concluding with a sharp nod, 55 from the chief. "Take him to Council Lodge," he ordered. "We learn what else he knows." As the warriors hauled the Doe-2 captive away, Grey Wolf turned to Emily and Tecumseh. "Doe-7, this changes path ahead. Stone Williams now hunts both of you, knows you can tell 13 truth of his crimes. All the more reason to reach Fort McDowell," Emily argued, "before he, 20, silences us permanently." Grey Wolf studied her with newfound 26 respect. "You have courage of Apache woman, even in white 32 skin." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Council meets now, not tomorrow. 38. Decision cannot wait with enemies so close." The chief strode toward the council lodge, calling for the elders to 45 join him. Tecumseh too moved to follow, then paused, turning back. "Do, Emily, stay 52 in your wiki up," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument this time. Warriors outside. "I return when Council 00 finishes." Emily wanted to protest, but recognized the genuine concern in his 05 eyes. This was not about keeping her away from tribal matters, but about protecting her from very real danger. 14. She nodded her agreement and headed back to her small dwelling. Her decision, 19, about Fort McDowell now carrying even greater urgency. The council's deliberations at 25 lasted well into the night. Emily sat in her wiki up, listening to the muffled sounds of the camp, hushed conversations. 33 outside, the occasional bark of a dog, the soft lullaby a mother sang to quiet. 39, her child. Despite the ordinary nature of these sounds, there was an 45 undercurrent of tension that hadn't been present before. The capture of Stone Williams's scout had changed everything. 53. 2 young warriors stood guard outside her dwelling, their silhouettes occasionally visible against the hide 58 walls when they moved. Their presence was both reassuring and unsettling. Protection, yes, but also a reminder of 06, the danger that had followed her to this place. Summer Mist had departed after arranging protective fetishes at the 12 wiki-up entrance. Small bundles of herbs and feathers that she explained would 18 ward off evil. Whether they worked or not, the gesture was touching. "Uncle 23 will protect you," Summer Mist had said with absolute certainty. "He has seen 28 your spirit," Emily had looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Summer Mist seemed surprised by the question. 35. "You do not know. In our ways, one person saves another from death, spirits .41 are joined. When you killed bandit that would take his life, your spirit spoke, 47 to him." She fingered the beaded necklace at her neck. "This is powerful, 52 medicine between warriors." It was past midnight when the hide covering her wiki 58 up entrance was pushed aside. Tecumseh too ducked inside, his expression grave in Murrow 4, the dim light of the small fire. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than before. "Council has 13 decided," he said without preamble, settling cross-legged before the fire. 18. Emily sat up straighter, heart quickening. "What will happen?" "Many 23 things." Tecumseh added a small stick to the fire, watching the flames catch. 28. "Please thank her for me." "Thank yourself," she says. "You learned .06 well for white woman." A hint of amusement flickered in Tecumseh's eyes. High 11 praise from Apache girl under a sky still scattered with stars. 6 figures, .18 slipped away from the Apache camp. Emily wore the buckskin dress and moccasins, her hair braided tightly, 25 against her head. At her hip hung a knife gifted by Grey Dove, its bone, 31 handle worn smooth by years of use. The derringer was tucked securely in a small 36 pouch at her waist, along with the carved eagles that had become her talismans. Tecumseh too led the way, 44 followed by Emily. Behind them came Stone Talker, the elder with the bear claw necklace. Swift Hawk, a 52 middle-aged warrior known for his tracking skills. Black Horse, younger than the others, but renowned for his 59 endurance. And to Emily's surprise, Yellow Fox, the one-eyed elder who had 04 been most skeptical of her testimony. Yellow Fox comes, she asked Takomisao, 11 quietly as they traveled through the pre-dawn darkness. His choice, Nakohatu 16 replied, says old eyes see truth others miss, good tracker before injury. They, 21, moved at a grueling pace, following hidden trails through increasingly rugged terrain. The warriors, 27, communicated with hand signals and occasional whispered words, maintaining strict silence as they traveled. By 34 midday they had put considerable distance between themselves and the camp, angling southeast toward Fort 41 McDowell. During a brief rest beside a hidden spring, Yellow Fox approached Emily, studying her with his one good 49 eye. To her surprise, he spoke in halting English. Woman lives. Many 55 Apache die. Why are you different? The blunt question caught Emily off guard, but she recognized its importance. This 102 man had lost much to white men's violence. He deserved an honest answer. I'm not different, she replied, 09 carefully. Just lucky and perhaps stubborn enough not to die easily. Wolf, 15, Singer considered this, then nodded once. Stubborn good. Bletcher stubborn, point 22, needs stronger medicine. As they prepared to resume their journey, a 25 distant sound froze them all in place. The unmistakable crack of a rifle shot, 31 echoing through the canyons. Takomisu signaled for immediate cover. Emily, 36, pressed herself against a rock face, heart hammering against her ribs. More shots followed, then shouts. The sounds, Hammer 43, came from the direction they had been traveling. Ambush ahead, Black Horse whispered. Stone Williams's men. 51, how did they find this trail? Stone Talker demanded. Knuckle Hugh's expression, 57, darkened. Traitor in camp. Or Stone Williams knows these mountains better than we, 03 thought. Swift Hawk had climbed to a vantage point and now signaled urgently. When he returned, his report was grim. 11, 8 men block canyon ahead. Only path to fort. The small party conferred, 17 quickly, debating options. In hushed Apache, Emily caught only fragments. 22, but the tension was clear. They were trapped between the approaching Stone Williams and a band of his men blocking their 58 escape route. We split, Takomisao announced finally. 3 warriors create 34 diversion, draw Stone Williams away. Emily and I with Yellow Fox find different 39 path to fort. It was a desperate gamble, but their only chance. Stone Talker 45 pressed something into Emily's hand. A small pouch containing sacred pollen. 50. For protection, he said simply. Speak truth to White Chief. The group separated with brief, solemn gestures of 58 farewell. Mountain Wolf, Swift Hawk, and Black Horse headed west, making 03 deliberate noise to draw pursuit. Emily, Takomisao, and Yellow Fox slipped 09 eastward, taking a treacherous path up a nearly vertical cliff face. By nightfall 15, they had reached a high ridge overlooking a vast expanse of desert. In the far distance, barely visible in the 22 fading light, stood the walls of Fort McDowell. Tomorrow, Yellow Fox said, 28 pointing to the fort, if live so long. They made camp in a sheltered hollow, 34 forgoing fire despite the night's chill. As they shared the last of their dried 40 meat, a flare of gunfire erupted in the distance. Their companions engaging 45 Stone Williams men in a firefight designed to draw attention away from their escape. They fight well, Takomisao said, 52 quietly. Give us chance. Emily stared into the darkness, guilt weighing heavily upon her. So much blood because 59 of one man's greed. Not your burden, Wolfser said, 5 unexpectedly. Stone Williams' shame, not yours. His gruff words offered strange 11 comfort. Emily touched the carved eagles in her pouch, wondering how many more would die before this journey. 18 ended. Dawn revealed a clear path to the fort, but also fresh 24 danger. Smoke rose from multiple points across the landscape, signal fires being 30 lit by Stone Williams's men, communicating their quarry's location. They know we come to Fort Nakohatu, observed a 36 grimly. We'll try to reach first, tell lies. Then we must hurry, Emily, 43 replied, gathering her few belongings. and pray Major Harrison is indeed a man 48 who listens. The final approach to Fort McDowell became a desperate race. They 53 abandoned stealth for speed, taking the most direct route across open terrain. Yellow Fox, despite his age, matched or won there. He paced without complaint, his weathered face set in determined lines. 06. When they were within a mile of the fort, riders appeared on the horizon behind them, 6 men pushing their 12 horses hard. Stone Williams had found them. "Go," Yellow Fox said, suddenly stopping. 18, I slow them. "No," Emily protested. "They'll kill you," the old warrior smiled, a fierce baring of teeth. 25, maybe kill some first. He notched an arrow. Old wolf still has teeth. 32. Before they could argue further, the gate of Fort McDowell swung open. A contingent of cavalry rode out, heading 38 directly toward them. Yellow Fox melted into the landscape with remarkable 44 speed, vanishing among the rocks. "Your soldiers come," he called back. "Tell 50 truth, teacher woman." Emily and Narco Hit 2 stood, their ground as the 56 cavalry approached from one direction, and Stone Williams' men from the other. It was a moment balanced on a knife's edge. Joe, too, their survival dependent entirely on which group reached them first. The cavalry officer reined in 20 yards or 09 away, his men forming a protective line between the pair and Stone Williams' approaching riders. "I am Captain .16 Wilson," he announced formally. "What business brings an Apache and a white woman to Fort McDowell?" Emily stepped 23 forward, shoulders straight, voice steady. "My name is Emily Stone, Sold 29 survivor of the Whitman wagon train massacre. I've come to speak with Major Harrison about crimes committed by James 35 Stone Williams and his men. Crimes they falsely blamed on the Apache people." The captain's eyes widened slightly. 42 Stone Williams arrived an hour ago claiming an Apache raiding party attacked his mining 47 camp and kidnapped a white woman. "He lies," Nakohatu said simply, as 54 always. Stone Williams's riders had pulled up short, seeing the cavalry's presence. At Anduzar's, their head sat a tall man with red hair and a distinctive scar across his cheek. 05. Even at this distance, Emily could feel the malevolence in his gaze. "I witnessed Stone Williams and his men murder 2314 settlers," Emily stated clearly. "They've been conducting raids on both settlers and Apache villages, 20 deliberately inciting conflict between our peoples for their own profit." Captain Wilson studied her face. 28. Then Nakohus then looked to Stone Williams' distant group. After a moment's consideration, he made his decision. "You, 35, will both come to the fort. Major Harrison will hear your testimony." He raised his voice for his men to hear. 42 and Stone Williams's men will be escorted in as well, under guard. As they rode 48 through the gates of Fort McDowell, Emily felt a strange sense of completion. The 54 circle that had begun with violence and desperate flight was closing with the promise of justice. Whether that promise, Dajro 1, would be fulfilled remained to be seen, but she had done what she set out to do. 07. She had brought the truth to light. Tekamisau, too, rode beside her, his face impassive. 13, but his eyes alert to every detail of their surroundings. In his stoic but 18 presence, Emily found the strength for whatever would come next. Together they, 23, had crossed boundaries few had dared to bridge. Whatever the outcome of the hearing before Major Harrison, that 29 accomplishment could never be taken. From them the carved eagles rested